Mason from Flying Wrench has recently put out a buyer's guide for the F-150. I drive an F-150. This is my F-150 over here. That's my F-150. I happen to know a thing or two about these F-150s, and I still work on them a lot. I still get customers that, since I left the dealership and now I'm my own shop owner, co-owner, not individually, and I run the joint, I get the experience of getting to touch everything that comes through the door. There's some things that I definitely agree in Mason's video was spot on, and there are some things that I don't agree was spot on, and I'm going to take you through my version of the F-150 buyer's guide, coming from an experienced tech as well. Mason has a plethora of experience under his belt. He's a wonderful dude. He's super smart. I enjoy being able to call the dude a friend or whatever, but we don't have to agree on everything, and that's the beauty of what I fought for in this country. I'm a veteran. People have the right to express themselves into the opinions that they want, as long as they're not doing harm to other people. That's really all I care about. In a situation like this, somebody reached out to me and said, can you give your opinion on the video, because I feel like if people went specifically off that video in an F-150 buyer's guide, that they would be in for a world of hurt. And I agree. Here's the reason why. The 10-speed transmission was not that great of a transmission. Overall, 10 speeds, we don't need 10 speeds in anything that we drive on a daily commute, 10 speeds are put in a vehicle for fuel consumption, or maybe you might get some performance or something out of it. We don't need a 10-speed transmission, and that 10R80 has caused more problems than the 6R80 has ever caused. So when Mason said, you know, no reason to shy away from a vehicle with a 10R80, I don't agree with that. If it has had the updated CDF drum, like the sleeve with the lip, and it's not going to slide and you're not going to get cross-flow performance issues, and the shuddering and the bucking and the jerking and the neutraling out in the middle of intersections and stuff like that, then I would say the 10R80 would be a decent transmission as an option. The 6R80 did have inherent issues early on, 11, 12, 13, 14, with lead frame issues. And basically it was a printed circuit board that was inside a plastic housing that would clip onto the transmission, and it had some information pathways and connection pathways from one solenoid or sensor to another that fed into the factory wiring harness, and then that would put information, you know, into the PCM, and it would receive and command via that network. Well, that printed lead frame wasn't very good. Aftermarket wasn't very good. OE support was somewhat better whenever they had them in stock, but they were on back order all the time. Now, Mason had brought up the fact that he wouldn't be opposed to picking a Gen 3 or Gen 4 Coyote. The reason I don't necessarily agree with that is because the Gen 3 Coyote, we had 11 to 14, and then we had 15, 16, 17, and then we had 18, 19, and 20. 18, 19, and 20 was an oil consumption year. Really bad. And there were a lot of the 5-liter Coyotes that had a ton of oil consumption problems. There's a massive amount of customers that ended up getting new engines and stuff. I've even done a few of them and showed here on the channel for oil consumption problems. In 17, you could get the 3.5 EcoBoost and the 10-speed transmission together, but you could not get it in the 3.7, the 3.3 NA options, or the 3.5 NA options. They had a naturally aspirated option. You could only get the 6-speed. The 3.5 EcoBoost was the only one that you could get the 10-speed transmission with in 17, and it was a disaster. And then come 18, 19, or 17, 18, 19, and 20, you had cam phaser rattle problems. You went through Gen 1, then you went through Gen 2, and then Gen 3 seemed to fix it, but then people started having problems with Gen 3 phasers rattling, and you're like, man, am I going to have to deal with this all the time on cold start? Am I going to have to deal with the turbo fittings leaking and the exhaust manifolds having to be resealed all over again? And that's thousands of dollars every single time that had to be done. I wouldn't have picked the 18, 19, and 20 5.0 unless they had a new updated engine or they could prove that there was no oil consumption problems, I would not pick that generation of a 5-liter, and I would not pick that generation of the 3.5 EcoBoost. I wouldn't do it. And then Gen 4 doesn't seem to be having the same problems, but some people are saying that they're starting to pop up with more and more oil consumption issues. But also Gen 4 ended up getting cylinder deactivation. Some of them had it, some of them didn't. It just all depended on how the truck was ordered. I didn't want that cylinder deactivation crap in my truck, even though Ford's design was a little bit better with the solenoid mechanism being built into the valve train on how it engages versus GM's, where they use an oil galley system to supply oil to the lifters to engage or disengage. Ford's design is better for sure, but I don't want that crap in my truck. So if I had to pick an F-150 with really good options, it would be a 2011 to 2017 Ford F-150 with a 5.0 and a 6-speed transmission, and I would service the transmission every 40,000 miles to stop any type of torque converter shudder. I've had a few issues in 15, 16 with some torque converter shudder. Are the most problems that I've seen so far is 2015, 2016, but there are also people that didn't change the oil for 100,000 miles. They were trying to go that lifetime that Ford says you can go, which is a complete disaster. I've seen people come in and service the transmission every 30, 40,000 miles and never have any type of torque converter shudder. I've seen that torque converter shudder that Mason talked about in that video. Ford has always had issues with that, just like he said, all the way up until 2019. I've seen those issues in all type of transmissions, not just the F-150. So if it was me and I wasn't looking for power, I have to agree with Mason on the little bulletproof naturally aspirated engines. It's the stuff around the engines that fail. It's not so much the engines themselves. I've seen them with 200, 250,000 miles, still the original timing chain, and still going. Is that a bright idea? No, it's not a bright idea, but it is what it is. They're no power, 300 horse, 3.3, 3.5, 3.7 NA engines from 2011 to 2020 and beyond, newer ones as well. And they're great engines. They are absolutely great engines. They don't have a lot of power, but they'll get the job done if you're just doing some basic towing and moving lawn equipment back and forth and stuff like that. Sure, they'll get the job done. They are probably the most reliable out of all the engines that you can buy. But if you're looking for some sporty power, some feel, some push in the seat, I would pick a 5-liter Coyote from 2011 to 2017. Or I would pick a 2.7-liter EcoBoost, 15, 16, 17, somewhere in there. The 2.7-liter EcoBoost is a decent little engine. It's got the CGI block like the Power Stroke block did. It's pretty strong. I never really had any of them have any kind of catastrophic failure. So 2.7-liter EcoBoost or the 5.0-liter EcoBoost would, or the 5.0, I wish it was an EcoBoost, Coyote from 2011 to 2017 with a 6-speed transmission would be my, to the day I die, that would be the route that I would go, because it's the least amount of problems, good transmission, keep it serviced, plenty of options, really comfortable truck. That would be my way to go. The 3.5 EcoBoost, you know, because of the turbo fitting issues, because of the oil and the coolant lines that would leak on them, because of the amount that you'd have to go through to reseal the manifolds and stuff, pull the turbos and stuff off, all the stuff that has to get replaced every single time, I'm not a fan of that. Yes, it's a very powerful engine. And yeah, you probably get 70, 80, 100,000 miles on it. But I've had guys come in with 40,000 miles, 30,000 miles on F-150 3.5 EcoBoost, and it's already leaking coolant. I just had a gentleman here at my house where I had to undo another mechanic's forescan programming because he screwed up the guy's truck with programming, and I had to reprogram everything, put all the as-built back into it, and he was telling me, man, this thing's only got 60,000 miles on it, and I've already had it in for turbo fitting, turbo lines, everything. And I was like, man, that's crazy. And he said, yeah, it cost me over $3,000, like about $3,300 to get everything resealed, the new fittings and stuff put in. And I said, you know what? That's why I don't recommend these to people. Yeah, they're great trucks, they're powerful and stuff like that, but there's too many little things that can go wrong with them, that do go wrong with them eventually, and it costs people a lot of money. The manifolds, the turbos, the fittings, the oil leaks at the front cover, the vacuum pump oil leaks in the back of the engine and stuff. Then the lead frame issues that you could have between like 11 to 14, 11 to 15. I'm just not a huge fan of them. If I had an F-150 in mind and I wanted to go for it, it would either be a naturally aspirated with a 6-speed, or it would be a 5-liter Coyote with a 6-speed, or a 270 EcoBoost with a 6-speed. I would not. I'm sorry, I can't do the 10-speed transmission. There were too many problems with it. I've worked on too many of these trucks where the 10-speed transmission has just been a complete disaster, and that's my opinion, and that's what I'm sticking to. This is no haste to Mason at all. But when I have my followers come to me and say, can you tell me what you think? Well, that's what I think. That's what I know. And that's all I can go off of. Y'all be blessed. Have a great day.